Hi, I'm Tessa, and welcome to Little Lady Homestead. So since it's almost spring and it's about time for people to start thinking about getting chicks for the year, I thought I would make another video about getting chickens. And my last one was on raising chicks. But before you even get to that point, you have to decide how many chicks or chickens you want to have in your flock. Now, if you've ever heard of chicken math, it is a real thing. Even if you start off with 4 chickens, it soon becomes 8, then 12, then 24, and it can really get out of control. So how many chickens are enough and how many are too much? Well, it all depends on you. So a few different factors that I'm going to talk about in this video. So the first factor that's really important to consider is your space. And chicks and chickens need a certain amount of space in their enclosures, whether they have a yard like this or they have a run, but they'll also need a coop space as well. So typically, on average, each chicken needs about 4 square feet of coop space. So inside their actual coop where they can go and roost at night and get out of the elements, each chicken needs about 4 square feet. Now that is an estimation. Your coop could be bigger for the number of chickens that you have. It could maybe be a little bit smaller, but it's always better to err on the side of caution and have it a little bit bigger, especially because you might end up with more chickens than you originally thought you would have. Like my coop is big enough for about 30 chickens, and I know that that's my cap, but I did not start off with 30 chickens. I started off with 4 chickens before I got this, and then as soon as I got this, I think immediately went to 25, but I've hovered between 25 and 30 since I've gotten it. So their coop space, and again, that includes roosting space. Each chicken needs at least 1 square foot of roosting space so that they can get up off the ground. And I have 2x4s covering the entire inside of that coop, so everybody has plenty of space, way more than 1 square foot of space to roost on. They also need laying box space, and my chickens, I think just now have started using about 4 nesting box spaces, but you want at least 1 nesting box space for every probably 4 to 6 chickens. I would say though that if you have a lot of nesting boxes, they pick their favorite ones, and you might have 5 nesting boxes and they'll only use 2. So that was how my chickens were up until about 2 weeks ago when they started laying really high volumes of eggs. So those are the things that you need to consider for your coop space. Is, again, they needed to have enough roosting bar space and they have to have enough nesting box spaces. So the next thing that you want to consider is the amount of outdoor space, run space or yard space that you have for your chickens. And the recommended space that you should have for your chickens is 8 square feet of that run or yard space per chicken. So right now I have just 1 strand of our electric netting set up for our chicken yard, and that's about 625 square feet for my 30 chickens in here. And I did have double the amount of space up until recently, but I don't have enough wood chips yet to fill up the entire, what is that, 1,250 square feet. So I consolidated it down to just 625 until I get enough wood chips, and then I can expand their yard size. But again, that's just preference. I like being able to see them roam around and have lots of space. But again, the minimum is 8 square feet per chicken. And so whether you have a yard, permanent yard, or you rotate them in electric netting, or they have a run connected to their coop, they need that space to be able to move around, get sunshine, preferably grass and insects would be great, and so that they can scratch around and be happy chickens. And then one last thing regarding space, you need to make sure that you can have enough feeder and water space for the amount of chickens that you have. The water and feeder that I had prior to getting the ones that I have now only had 2 ports for the feeder, and I think I just had 2 ports for the water as well. So I only had 4 chickens when I first started out, and so having the 2 ports for feeders and waters worked out okay. There wasn't too much competition for them to get in and eat and drink. That wouldn't work for my 30 chickens now. They would all beat each other up to try to get that food and that water. So there needs to be more access to food and water. So I actually have 2 feeders now that have 15 spots for each of them to eat. So I have a total of 30 ports in their feeders, and my water has, I think, 8 of the nipples that they can drink from. Okay, girl tuna. So sometimes there is a little bit of competition for the water, but I think so far so good. Thankfully, it doesn't get too hot here in the summer, but I would say that if it did get really hot, I would want to have probably 2 of those. That way, I would have double the amount of capacity for them to drink. It is a 55-gallon barrel, so it's not going to run out, and I check it every day, but just so that they could drink at the same time if they wanted to. So the next thing that you want to consider is feed costs, and that's probably going to be your main cost with raising chickens is their feed, and each hen will eat about a 1/4 pound of food every day. So on average, if you're paying about $16 per 50-pound bag of feed, it's going to cost you about $10 a month to feed 4 chickens and about $20 a month to feed 8 chickens. You'll also maybe provide scratch for your chickens, so that might be another $12 a month or so, depending on how much treats or extra enrichment that you want to give them. And so that could be, anywhere between $20 and $30, depending, again, on how many chickens you have. I have a lot more chickens, so I spend about $70 a month on their feed and on their scratch. You also will have to give them grit, and so that will be an additional cost, but that will last you a really long time, so it's probably only a few dollars a month. Another expense that you'll have is their bedding, and in their yard here I have wood chips that thankfully I was able to get for free from a tree company who dropped a truckload off for me. But if you don't use wood chips in your run, you may need to use straw or wood shavings, and so that is an expense as well. I do use wood shavings inside my coop, and I use actually hay for the nesting boxes. It's convenient because the goats are right next to them, so I bring the hay for the goats, and then I have some extra left over that I just put new hay in there every day. The more nice plush bedding that you keep in their nesting boxes, the cleaner the eggs will be, so I make sure that it's nice and plush, and so that is an expense as well. So the more chickens that you have, the more expensive it will be. So just make sure that you know that your monthly costs may outweigh your egg consumption costs. So just do that calculation on your own to see if it's worth it. And if it's more of a hobby, you just want to have them because you love them, just know that that will be the cost of your hobby. So the last thing that you want to consider is how many eggs will you actually eat in a week? And every family is different. You may have a family of 2 that only eats 8 eggs per week and you only want a few chickens. Or you may have a family of 2 that eats 50 eggs a week. It all depends. For us, we have a family of 6 and we go through a lot of eggs, probably about 30 eggs a week. But with 30 chickens, we have a major surplus of eggs when we're in the height of spring and summer and they're laying a lot. So we sell our remaining eggs. and that might be an option for you as well. You can sell your eggs, and especially if you have colored eggs, colored and dark brown eggs, you can sell them for $3, $4, $5, $6 a dozen. If you have those blue, green, pink, and brown eggs, you can market them a little bit for higher prices. And also if you feed them organic feed, that will drive up your costs a little bit, but it does make it more marketable for you to sell them. So those are some options, but if you aren't interested in going through the extra work of selling eggs and you only eat a few eggs per week, then you don't want to get 30 chickens. And so you'll have to decide how many chickens you want based off of the number of eggs that you need. So each chicken breed on average lays a different amount of eggs per year or a different amount of eggs per week. So Buff Orpingtons are a very common breed, and they lay about 250 eggs per year. And so that's about 4 to 5 eggs per week for one chicken. And another breed, ISA Brown, they lay up to 350 eggs per year. Woo! So, and ISA Browns lay up to 350 eggs per year. So that's 6 to 7 eggs per week for just one chicken. So if you only want a dozen eggs, then you may only need 3 chickens, but it's probably best to have 4 just in case. So I'll talk about attrition next. So when you plan the number of chickens that you want, I do think it is better to get maybe 1 or 2 or maybe 5% more than you actually think you need, because you will see a certain amount of loss. Chickens are prey animals, and they are very unlikely to show you that they are sick or there's something wrong with them, because if they did that in the wild, they would be picked off by predators first. So it's pretty common that they will seem just fine, and then the next day they might be dead. And that has happened to me a few times, but probably more than that, we've had predator pressure. Again, I do like to have my chickens in a yard so they have lots of space to run around and to scratch on the ground, but it does open them up to predators. We have hawks, we live up on a hill, and so we have had a few chickens picked up by hawks. And so if I have 30 chickens, then within a few months or a year, I might be down to 25. And so like I said, I usually have between 25 and 30 chickens because I might lose a few. So if you're planning on having 4 chickens, I would recommend maybe get 5 because something might happen, especially if you get them as chicks. I might get 6 because I typically will lose probably about 1 chick every time I get them. I usually have at least a 90% success rate because I do usually get more chicks in each order, but you probably will experience some loss, even more so with chicks, because they're just tiny little babies that were probably shipped across the country before you got them, whether you got them from a hatchery directly or you got them from the store. So that's normal and it's sad, but it does happen. So I would order, an extra 1 or 2 just so that you're ready for those losses. So the last thing that you might want to consider when you are figuring out how many chickens that you want to get is if you want to get or if you can get any roosters. Now, when I first started out having chickens, I lived in a city that did not allow roosters, not even one. And so I actually wasn't allowed to have chickens either, but I did. I hid them in my backyard. But a lot of times if you live in a city or a suburb, you are not allowed to have roosters, even if you are allowed to have chickens. So if that's the case, then unfortunately you won't be able to have one. But if you do live in an area where you can have roosters, then you can get 1 or more for your flock. I only have 1 right now, even for my 30 chickens, but again, it's estimated that you can have 1 rooster for every 10 hens that you have. So I guess in theory, I could have up to 3. I don't want to push my luck right now. I don't feel the need so bad to make sure that every single egg is fertilized, even if he doesn't get to every single hen. I think that's okay. I may get 1 additional rooster just so that if something happens to him, then I'll have a backup, and it wouldn't be bad to have 2. because I would like to hatch my own barnyard chickens this year. But again, that's up to you. I am less confident around my rooster than I am my chickens. I love my chickens so much and they're so sweet. But roosters still kind of scare me a little bit. So I am just very respectful of him and make sure to always give him his space and never make him feel threatened. And hopefully he'll like us and never want to attack us in the future. But so far he's been really nice to the hens and he is not aggressive at all towards us. So far so good. He's a well summer and I think he's beautiful and I hope he makes some beautiful babies. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video and I hope it helps you if you are planning to get your own chickens coming up this year and you have no idea where to start or how many to get. I love my chickens so much and I'm so happy that I have them. And I love all the different breeds that I have. So I'm thankful that I have the space to have my 30 chickens. But even if you don't, then at least you will know before you get them. And so you won't get overwhelmed with the cost to upkeep them and the amount of eggs that they'll produce. So that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it and I'll see you in my next one.